The boys are back in town. The boys are back in town. Do 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 do. The boys are back in town. The boys are back in town. The boys are back in town. I'm John Wyndham with the retro review of NWA CWF Battle of the Belts 3 from September 1st, 1986. The final Battle of the Belts event because, unfortunately, the Florida Territory was losing too much money after Eddie Graham's untimely passing in the beginning of '85. They still had some big events, but it was obvious without him as the head of the company, the infrastructure just would not basically hold up. The foundation was cracking, and even by Battle of the Belts 2, you could kind of tell. Even though Battle of the Belts 1, things seemed okay, they needed the NWA's help, and Jim Crockett Promotions would end up buying the Florida Territory. So I do want to thank Classic Wrestling Stuff on YouTube for putting this event up as full and complete as possible, as well as other events, and for wrestling fans and other channels for keeping territories like this alive. Because I don't know when this stuff's going to make it to Peacock. It's just really cool to see. I do also want to say, before I get too much into this review, this is probably going to be the final classic wrestling show that I review for a while, because I've been reviewing a whole lot of stuff. Not just on YouTube, but before the WWE Network went to Peacock, I reviewed some Georgia Championship Wrestling, some Mid-South Wrestling, stuff like that. So I'm probably going to take a break and do some movie reviews. But let's dive into this. So they're in the Ocean Center in Daytona Beach, 8,000 people roughly. And the reason I did The Boys Are Back in Town is because they had like 30 seconds, 45 seconds of that song play. So why did the announcers do that when you could just play that song? So anyway, Gordon Solie and a guy named Stan Rhodes, who I have no idea who Stan Rhodes is. And if he's called wrestling before, it really didn't show here because he wasn't very good. So we joined Tyree Pride versus the Cuban Assassin in progress. So much in progress, I looked up the results of this. This match went 15 and a half minutes, and thank God we only saw the final 30 seconds, so I had no desire to see 15 and a half minutes of, nothing against these guys, but I didn't want to see a match like this go on that long. And it was a roll-up, basically for 3. There we go. That was it. So Jim Backlund, who would later become the Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey, took on Bob Cook, and that was cut. That was the opening match, apparently. So that's all right. The Fabulous One, Stan Lane and Steve Kern. Stan Lane before the Midnight Express, and Steve Kern before he became Skinner, the Alligator Man. That was probably the most famous gimmick that he had as far as big exposure, which is a shame because Fabulous Ones were a pretty damn good team. They took on the Sheepherders. And if the Sheepherders, don't ring a bell, perhaps you will recognize them as Luke and Butch the Bushwhackers. That's to entertain the few people that want me to do the goddamn dance, because I know that there are people out there, even though I have a small audience, some people just like to see that. I gotta give the people what they want. So, yes, the NWA Florida U.S. tag titles, and, well, it was a bit short, but it was neat to see. I mean, it was only like 7.5 minutes. The Herders they couldn't really go anymore, but, I mean, they bled and just beat their bodies to shit. But, of course, he cut off his air supply, so he was so out of love. He's so lost without him. And by him, I mean his tag partner, and he had to tag him in. They get flag shenanigans, but oh no, they do the twin magic thing. See, this is when twin magic was done well. And Inside Cradle 1, 2, 3, and Lane and Kern retained. So, there you go. Good stuff. The White Ninja, the Great Muta, the future Great Muta, he still wasn't the Great Muta. He was in black pants. Yeah, he was called the White Ninja. And he took on Tim Horner. It's NWA US Junior Heavyweight Championship. Kendo Nagasaki was in Muta's corner. I'm just going to call him Muta because it's easier to remember that. The White Ninja, not necessarily great. So Muta's smooth. So goddamn smooth. You can tell even though he's a couple years into his career and he was on excursion, and he was one of the few bright spots of the last number of months, like the last year of Florida's Championship Wrestling. Horner, he used an armbar a lot of armbar variations. Muta got the leg lock, locking it around his head, hence, the earlier air supply line. And then it was actually really nice how Kendo hit him with that little wooden sword thing. Not a Kendo stick, more in the pity, and then Muta Salt, 1, 2, 3, which popped the crowd. I mean, this is not even peak Muta. This is young Muta where he hadn't destroyed his knees completely, so it's pretty cool to see. And then Nick Bockwinkel took on Kendo Nagasaki, AWA title match. Yeah, it ended after 7 minutes. This wasn't good. Yeah, there was a trip because Oliver Humperdinck was in Kendo's corner and tripped, not realizing that the ref was like, I saw you, this was stupid, DQ. Not great. You could skip this one and not miss shit. Road Warriors with Ellering versus the Shock Troops, which was Ed Gantner, whatever, and Kareem Muhammad, who I believe was in Mid-South Wrestling for a time. And he was basically a human waterbed by this point. Speaking of human waterbeds, Oliver Humperdinck was there. And, well, then a double DQ, and refs tried to come in. The Road Warriors are laying them out, and then wrestlers tried to come in. There really wasn't much to a lot of this show. Like Kendall Wyndham versus Chris Champion, who I'd not heard of. I thought it was Todd Champion under another name. NWA Florida Bahamas Championship. I wrote down who the fuck was Chris Champion because the name just doesn't ring a bell. And I'm not knocking the guy. I did look up, and apparently he passed away in 2018. Rest in peace. Terrible. I just can't say I really remember the guy too well. We get a ref bump, and then we get a bulldog, and this is after 4 minutes, but the ref calls a DQ. And the announcers kill time. So then we get Back in Black playing Lex Luger to the ring. I want you to think about that. Lex Luger having Back in Black by AC/DC play him to the ring. And then some Champion song playing Flair to the ring, and I don't know what the name of the song is. If you've seen this event, or if you want to watch this, if you can figure out what the song is, send me the song in the link. I would love to, or, in the comments, I would love to know, or type it out, and I'll look. But it was Flair versus Luger, NWA World Title match, best 2 out of 3 falls, so it's 20-minute intervals for each fall. And basically, if each fall went to a draw, then it would be 3 draws. So we can't do that. We can't be that boring, but we can extend one fall a bit longer than it should have been. So anyway, Flair always made Lex look like $1 million. This was Lex really when he was in the infancy of his career. He'd only been wrestling for a little bit. But I will say that Flair could just he could get everything out of Lex, and he did here. He did some good stuff. Now, of course, they would have a Bear match, Great American Bash 88, just under 2 years after this. And then Starrcade 88, and a series of matches in 90. Well, especially, I would argue, was it Wrestle War? It was Wrestle War 90. Capital Combat 90, less good. Even though that match wasn't bad, the shenanigans and the cage stuff, all that bullshit, that was ridiculous. But with this match, since it was young Lex Luger and it was Flair, when he was in even more peak form, it's good stuff. He does target the knee, and Flair does get the figure 4, uses the ropes, and Lex just passes out from the pain, not very convincingly, and gets pinned. Then Lex roars back in the second fall and ends up hitting a winding power slam, 1, 2, 3. So, third fall took a bit. We got a bear hug by Lex, and that is how the fall ended. Flair does end up bleeding, because of course he fucking does, because he's Ric fucking Flair. We get more knee focus, and then the bear hug, but oh no, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and third fall ends in a 20-minute draw. The crowd chants bullshit. That's a good sign for return matches. You want your crowd to chant bullshit. Basically, they could tell they were stretching this out too goddamn much. And even though they cheered Luger, it was obvious he wasn't quite there yet. He needed to be more of a heel because he just couldn't be. It was easy to boo Flair, but Lex just was not a natural face because he's pretty unlikable and also led to the death of Miss Elizabeth. And no, I'm not going to forget that. So anyway, we have Barry Windham versus Ron Bass, NWA Florida Heavyweight Championship match. Barry takes him outside, slams him down the concrete, and then the original broadcast just ends, so we have to see glitchy bonus footage. But you know what? I'm not knocking classic wrestling stuff. It's just how the tapes were presented. They probably did the best they could to edit the stuff. But yeah, we see glitchy footage, basically, of Barry Windham beating Ron Bass to become the Florida Heavyweight Champion. And I don't remember Barry was the final champion, but he was one of the final champions, and that was really it right there. So yeah, Battle of the Belts 3 kind of ends with a whimper, and thus ends really, a tour through hysteria of me reviewing a whole bunch of older territorial stuff. That's not to say that I won't dive into some stuff. I have stuff on, my watch later list, but I think it's about time I dive into some movies. I'm gonna review the weekly wrestling that I usually do for those that have been watching the channel for a while. But bear with me, guys. I'll get back to the territorial stuff eventually. Anyway, agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.